We are joined by one of the best in the business from Fox Sports and The Athletic, Ken Rosenthal. Ken, welcome to the program. And it appears the players have some resolve. They're changing states. It's 48 hours later. It doesn't seem like this is going to be a group that's going to cave soon.
I would agree with that, Frank. And granted, they haven't paycheck yet. And is ultimately the first test and the test going forward. Can they withstand losing money? Now, the union will give them part of their salaries back, $15,000 for each player in April if they want it. But we will see if this thing goes a long time, if they're able to stay together the way they will need to. But to this point, this is, as they have said, the players, the most unified they've been since 94, 95. They weren't around for that, most of them. I was, and yes, this is definitely the case. They are of a very single mindset here, and they want change, and we'll see if they can bring it about.
So how bad a week has it been for the commissioner, Rob Manfred? The awkward smiles during the press conference, talking about the owner's loss of revenue over the last 5 years. I don't think America is embracing our baseball commissioner.
No, I would agree with that, Frank. And to some degree, it's because he has to be the out front guy, the spokesman for the owners. He's the one navigating a very tricky path, trying to unite 30 owners with very different. At the same time, I've written this, a lot of people have said it, he's not the best in public form, and his manner has really succeeded in galvanizing the players. And right now they see him as this giant boogeyman, kind of the incarnation of all their problems. Whether that's fair or not is almost inconsequential. It's gotten to that point, and he has to bear some responsibility for that.
What about the ramifications? First of all, the on-field product has suffered a little bit, too much dead time, the games are too long, not enough offense. But if you have this labor situation, is there a chance that there's going to be some real long-term negative effects to America's national pastime, Ken?
Frank, if we miss a number of games, and I'm not talking about 2 series, which is the current going to be canceled, but say a month's worth, yes, people will be upset enough where there's a certain percentage of people who are disaffected and who will say, I'm not coming back. Now, some of those people will come back, but you lose also the chance to kind of grab casual fans. And it's a bigger entertainment landscape, far bigger than in 1994, 95. There are more choices for people, and the sport, even now, is not where it was back then. So, yes, there is a chance of permanent damage to this sport, and that's something that both parties need to be aware of.
After a 16-hour negotiating day on Monday, I think all of us had a sense of anticipation that something good was going to happen Tuesday. But Ken, maybe the two sides weren't that close after all.
They weren't, Frank. And I remember the last tweet I sent out at about 2:30 a.m. Players believe there are large gaps in major areas. That was the story consistently throughout that day and throughout the. Part of it was, perhaps, as the players said, Major League Baseball wanting to create this impression that there was positive momentum and kind of use that as a pressure point. Part of it also was kind of what you alluded to. I think we all wanted to believe that things were going better and thinking, well, how can they possibly not? Ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous, but it didn't turn out that way. They weren't that close. And now they have some work to do to get back to a point where they can get a deal. In my opinion, it should not be that difficult. We're talking about numbers at this point, not concepts. Just get the numbers to a place where both parties are comfortably uncomfortable, and then you'll have a deal.
Can you explain luxury tax in as layman terms as possible? Because people read it, and I don't think the majority of people really understand how important it is to these negotiations.
Sure. Frank, what the luxury tax is a soft salary cap. And when I say that, what I mean is it's a number that a team can exceed. They can exceed it, but they'll have to pay a penalty. And the reason this is such a contentious issue is because the way the threshold has operated, teams have kind of served it as a salary cap. Teams have hovered right underneath it and refused to go over because they don't want to pay the penalties. Well, that was not the intention of the luxury tax. What it was intended to do is stop teams from going in a runaway spending kind of manner. That's what Max Scherzer said the other day, and he was right about that. So it's not serving its intended purpose. And what the players want is for that threshold, the first threshold, and then the subsequent threshold, to be increased so teams can spend more leading up to it. And they want the penalties to be the same or lower so they don't get penalized as heavily when they do exceed that threshold.
So the average salary is $4 million. So if you missed the first week, the average player lost $153,000. How much longer do you think they can hold out?
I don't know. And we haven't missed anything yet, right? We haven't had that situation occurred. Granted, right now, series have been canceled, but if a deal was to come about, let's say this weekend, just for the sake of discussion, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if that happened, then perhaps you could reschedule those games. Perhaps you could pay the players $162 for the $156 they will play. There are ways around that. So if we're talking, on the other hand, about a month of missed games, that's different. And that is a consequence that players will have to deal with and consider just where each of them wants to be.
Final thought. I don't want Major League Baseball to become more like the NHL and the NBA in terms of allowing almost everybody in the postseason. But I do think there's something to be said for expanding the playoffs because, we may not get to see Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani in the postseason. We need our stars in October on national television.
I understand that sentiment, Frank, and certainly if you went to 14 teams, even 12 teams, which is what they've been discussing more recently, you'd have a better chance of that happening. The players' concern, and in my opinion, there's validity to this, is that if you go to 14 especially, then a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees, a kind of a team that's perennially in the playoffs, would not feel as compelled to spend. They'd figure, we'll get in. And then, of course, we know this. People in St. Louis know it quite well. Once you get in, if you're the hot team, you have a chance to win the World Series. That's the concern, that it won't be enough of incentive for competition. And incentivizing competition has been a major theme of these talks.
I lied. I'm sorry. One more thought. The effect on free agency when this lockout is over. Do you think people like Chris Bryant and Freddie Freeman and Kyle Schwarber will have to pay for this and not get big contracts?
I don't know that it will happen to players like that. The best players are still going to get paid as long as this doesn't go, let's say, 3 months. And then you have a serious revenue hit. The clubs can say, guys, sorry, we didn't get the money and we're not paying you. But I don't expect the top group to suffer. I do expect that, yes, the middle group and below could have a hard time because if there are any games lost, if revenue is lost, the owners can simply cite that as, hey, we don't have the money we did before and treat free agency accordingly.